Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. It's Ukraine War Frontline update for the 21st of June 2024. There is not an awful lot to report today. The front lines are very quiet, at least according to the mappers that we use, thanks to JR who has done the mapping today. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please check out the screen, pause the video and check out the key on the screen at the moment. Right, let's go to that front line. You can see there are literally only 2 pins. First thing to note is that this is really good news for the Ukrainians. It's not to say that things aren't hot all along the front lines. The Russians are using sizable bombs. If they aren't the FAB 3000s that are being claimed by some, then they are still sizable bombs, and there is some more footage coming out today saying, well, if that one wasn't yesterday, then this one is today, or this video is. So there are various claims. The end result is that the Russians are hammering some of those Ukrainian I would say front lines, but they're actually behind the front lines, just towns really. There was Andrew Perpetua is having a really appropriate rant today about a 240mm, probably one of the tulips, the tulpans, the 240mm self-propelled mortars that the Russians use, just sending off ordnance into a town, a village where people live, just like bang, there you go. That's a building that probably has civilians in. It's just, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Anyway, so that is obviously happening. There are fights. There's fighting taking place all along the front lines. Just not a lot of change to the frontline mapping. Of course, all of our lines represent Russian defensive lines. There are changes to the grey zone that are taking place, particularly places like Chantiv Yar. It takes place on a daily basis, and it doesn't reflect in merely looking at the Russian defensive lines as they move into the grey zone, push the grey zone back, and then maybe get repelled, and then it's very dynamic. But my lines will be somewhat static, even if that is happening. Anyway, we'll go to the northern area of Kharkiv, north of Kharkiv, where there are no changes to the front lines around here. The Russians have not pushed any further, and the Ukrainians neither, around the western of the two zones. We do have the Vovchansk area showing some. We've got a ratification here. So AP Andrew Perpetua has Russian gains in that area. So that is showing that the Russians have pushed, or at least control more of that surrounded area. Is a little bit odd here, because Surat Maps, a pro-Russian mapper, has the Russians completely controlling land that is connecting the main Russian area in the middle of Vovchansk to the aggregate plant here. The other two mappers have the aggregate plant under control of the Russians, but not this bridge connecting the two. Deep State Maps has the closer of Andrew Perpetua and Deep State as far as the Russians getting to the aggregates. Andrew Perpetua has the Russians controlling area of land further back here, but it's only Surat Maps that connects the two, and that is obviously not what the other mappers agree with. Now, whether they are still properly surrounded, I don't know. I've not heard a lot of news about this over the last few days, but one would assume that both Deep State Map and Andrew Perpetua would agree that this land is surrounded. Also, I have to say that there was an area of land on the west here that had the wrong colour pin on yesterday. It could well be this area. So Surat Maps has the situation north of Kharkiv from Chuhiv axis, recaptured some positions east of Vovchansk. The Ukrainian army did, sorry. So that is the case around somewhere around here. I think we had the wrong coloured pin on there yesterday. Anyway, it still seems pretty decent or not decent, that's the wrong kind of word. It seems that this area of Vovchansk, and in fact both of these two sectors, are probably more positive for the Ukrainians than for the Russians as it stands, but it's obviously going to be tough fighting there. It's worth popping into the Institute for the Study of War American Military think tank just to get a little handle on some of the claims about Vovchansk. I was just about to move away, but I thought they might have something to say, and indeed I think they do. So they say geolocated footage published yesterday indicates that Ukrainian forces recently retook several positions northeast of Vovchansk and advanced along Soborna Street within northern Vovchansk, and this is the geolocation that they give. So the 204th Regiment of the SPN Akhmat FPV attacks Ukrainian positions. So we've got Ukrainians in this position being attacked by the Akhmat, which are the Chechen special forces. So let's have a look and see where that puts the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians, therefore, here. So that's interesting. So we saw the other day that the Ukrainians took this area here, and or at least the Russian defensive lines were pushed back there. All the mappers, apart from Deep State, have all the mappers, the other two mappers, changed that there. So agreement from Andrew Perpetua and Suret Map. So that was a change, and that is the evidence given. It doesn't say anything about this central part, though. It does go on to talk about the aggregates plant. So a Russian mill blogger claimed that Russian forces conducted strikes against Ukrainian positions along the Hohol and Olesya Dozvitna streets in central Vovchansk, and ISW has not observed recent evidence of enduring Russian positions within the area of central Vovchansk, suggesting that Ukrainian forces maintain positions in the area despite previous Russian claims, and that could give you an indication that, you know, Russians are claiming X and Y, and the reality is not that. The Mill blog also claimed that Russian forces seized two buildings on the grounds of the Vovchansk aggregate plant, but ISW has not seen visual evidence of that claim, and that is going to be possibly some move here that maybe Andrew Perpetua has now seen, suggesting that they have indeed made some extra ground around that aggregates plant with those people who are themselves surrounded. So anyway, that's what's going on there. No change to the northeastern front line, Kupiansk to Kreminna. No change to Siversk. No change to Bakhmut. Talk about as I was mentioning earlier, talk about the change to the grey zone. This is one of the areas, Kalinivka, where the grey zone seems to go backwards and forwards. I think that is often what Suret Maps really maps is changes to the grey zone, and the other mappers are like, yeah, no, we'll wait until there's more consolidated evidence for that. Come down to the Avdiivka area, where you can see here that there's a little bit of a change to the Karlivka dam area. So no change. This is really good news because there's been quite a lot of activity around this northern part of the Avdiivka salient, where the Russians have been inching forward both north and northwest there. But indeed, the only change is a tiny bit of land gained north of the Karlivka reservoir here, where we have Suret Map saying that the Russians have recaptured some positions east of... Oh no, that's what we just said. Had a situation northwest of Donetsk. During the last few hours, the Russian army managed to enter the first building, so the northern part of Karlivka. So you have the town of Karlivka, but it is split between the north and the south of the reservoir there. The Russians are moving along the north there. Really no other change to the front lines, at least according to the mappers. We're just going to drop into a video that someone sent me. Thank you very much. I think it's Schnitzel von Krum. Sent me on Twitter to say this is a good one. It's an Australian military man who has spent some time on Dnipro River with some units there, who has come back and is giving a talk to Australian military personnel about the situation around here. And we're going to talk about Kazachi Lahiri here, which is near Krinky, but I think the same thing might apply, the same kind of idea for here as it did over there. Okay, let's go to your man here.
To that bit in a second. This is the laydown. That's me again in that little blue dot. Weirdly enough, the 80th Independent Motor Rifle Brigade is an Arctic unit. I actually
so he was
went
around
across the Russian frontier
here
with Norway in 2016 and looked from an OP into the base of this unit when it was up near Murmansk. And now they find themselves in swampy, hot, 35-degree heat down in southern Ukraine, and they're hating it. That's 124th Territorial Brigade holds the Ukrainian side. You've got a number of different elements of the 80th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade. This area here, Kazachi Lahiri, was the site of a Ukrainian soft raid when I was there. It's a good illustration of how they're operating. So that raid was not intended to take prisoners or capture territory. Essentially, they shot them in across a wide front with a lot of stuff across the river and fires in order to create a diversion. And they essentially inserted a team to get a sensor system and an antenna into the right location that they could then control UAVs on the other side of the river to bring a strike in. It's all about maneuvering for advantage and fighting for information, but in a very electronic warfare heavy way and enabling.
So what he's basically saying is that when you see these, not all the time, but at least in this occasion, and one would assume in other occasions, and this won't necessarily be about the river, I would have thought, is probably what goes for attacks elsewhere on the line. When you see, in this case, a Ukrainian attack, a soft raid, it is really a raid across, and we were wondering, they're in Kazachie Lahiri, there's all this activity going on, and then it suddenly disappeared. And I don't know if you remember me saying, I don't know what's going on there. I've heard nothing about Kazachie Lahiri, and then you suddenly hear it's under Russian control, eventually down the line. But what the Ukrainians were doing is doing a raid, getting across there, putting a relay antenna, one would have thought, that then gives them the ability to fire their drones much further. So if otherwise you are losing out that amount of 6 kilometers or so. Well, now you can put a relay there. You can get your drones another 6 kilometers further back from where you originally were, and that then really gives you some. If you're talking about 20 kilometers from the relay, then you can get back. Let's see. There you go. The other side of Oleshki Sand. So you can get. Essentially you can get a much greater range. So that appears to be what they were trying to do or succeeding in doing, and then they pulled back out there. Now, I'm not saying that's what was happening in Krinky. They were there for a lot longer, but there is this sense that they are trying to do other things other than just take territory, right?
Artillery as a thing from direct fire. Weirdly enough, illustrating my point earlier that the Russians they really suck at junior leadership. By accident, without even intending to, this Ukrainian soft element that was working with resistance groups captured the battalion commander of the 2nd Battalion.
Which I reported to you. Remember, they got him to divulge loads of information about what's going on in the area. It was a real coup that they got him.
Who was down on his front line with two guys as an escort, doing a job that would be done by a corporal in an Australian battalion, literally moving the gun positions around, because they just don't have the junior commanders with the initiative or the training to do what we would just take for granted. So they ended up capturing the CO of that unit and took him back to their pick, and he basically told them all the layout and what was going on the Russian side of the river.
Incredible. Talks about double tap artillery strikes. So really information-rich video that I haven't watched it all. I'm going to sit down. I probably won't sit down. I'll probably be doing something and listening to it. So I thought that was an interesting little nugget about Kazachie Lahiri. But anyway, no change to the front line. It's we're around summer solstice at the moment. It's going to be hopefully a nice enough evening outside. I have a little extended paddling pool out the back of my house, and I just want to say a public thanks to, I think it was Benny Pie, who's sorting out AI transcription for all of my videos, legend, and he said, have you thought about getting yourself a tether? Anyway, this is going to be me in about 20 minutes.
There we go.
That is what a true athlete looks like. I mean, you don't get a body like mine just sitting on my ass talking to the internet. This is proper exercise, and all I can actually say is that, do you know what, for someone with multiple sclerosis, that is super useful. That is perfect length of tether, and it keeps me. I did 300 reps yesterday, so I was super happy with that. Anyway, just an official thank you to Benny Pie for giving me the idea to doing that. Anyway, that's enough from me. You guys take care. It was a short one today, which you'll be happy to know. Ukraine have just won 2-1 in the European Championships against Slovakia. So that's really cool for Ukraine. Happy days. Take care. Speak soon.